Hello there guys, how are you all doing? Welcome back to Rule of 2 Review. So last time I of course made 7 big bets, as I like to call them, about Nintendo at E3. What might happen, what might they talk about, what might not they talk about, what release dates might change, all sorts of random fun things. I had a really great conversation with you guys about 7 big predictions, bold predictions I should probably call them, about what Nintendo might do at the show. And like I said in that video, I wanted to do another one talking about the wider industry and the wider E3 for this year. What kind of things might happen across all companies, all platforms, all presentations and conferences, all sorts of things. I thought it would be a lot of fun to do that because it is E3 hype time, and it's just always the best time of the year. So I wanted to move forward with part 2 today and discuss what I have today, 12 big bets specifically about E3 and what might happen from Microsoft, Sony, Square, EA, all sorts of different things. So of course I do have a lot more bets because I'm covering a lot more companies and possibilities in this video, so I don't want to make this too crazy long like my videos tend to be, so we're just going to kind of get right to it and try to steamroll through these as quick as I can. Now the first handful of bets I want to talk about have to do with the other huge thing we know to expect at the show this year, that is Microsoft and the Scorpio. What information, what solid concrete details are we going to find out about the Scorpio? It's one of the big things happening this year, and one of the things we're all really wondering about. You know, the Digital Foundry spec thing was fine, I guess, for people who might care about that, but that didn't really give us anything we care about. So I'm going to start off with a couple of big bets about Microsoft and the Scorpio. So my first big bet is a pretty obvious and straightforward one. I feel pretty good saying that we are going to see the actual physical console and the controller for the Scorpio. More than just the console, the controller as well. I think we have to all consider those things. This is the time, if Microsoft is going to stick to like a holiday 2017, which is like 6 months from now, if they're going to stick to that time frame, they've got to show us the unit and the box and make us understand really what this console is, why it's going to be important, what they plan to do with it, and why they believe it might be the future of the Xbox brand. I think that a lot of things are starting to signal potentially, like if the Scorpio fails, for example, that Microsoft might leave the console gaming market altogether. There's a lot of people talking about that, and I tend to agree that there are some signs pointing to that. I don't want that to happen. I really like Microsoft, and I love my Xbox One, so hopefully that doesn't happen. But if they're going to make the Scorpio something that feels tangible and real to a lot of people and actually try to sell the consumer on this thing, they've got to show us the unit, they've got to show us the box. They need to do the opposite of what Nintendo did, for example, with the Wii U, where they didn't really focus on the console, so it confused people. Granted, people won't be confused about the Scorpio in the same way, but I do think they would make a huge mistake if they talk about it, but they don't actually show the unit. So I expect to see the unit, I expect to see the controller. Another bet that goes alongside this is more of a bigger bet than that first part. I think that they will also announce and reveal a brand new first-party game right alongside the launch of the Scorpio. So obviously, they are not yet going to make games that might be exclusive to the Scorpio. I do theorize that eventually that will happen. I don't care what anyone says. If this thing is as powerful as the specs lead us to believe, eventually, even if it's in 2 or 3 years, we're going to get Scorpio exclusive games. But I do believe Microsoft when they say that right now, that's not the plan. Every game will be Xbox One and Xbox Scorpio, absolutely. And through that, I think that they will reveal a brand new first-party game that is going to launch for the Xbox, all forms of the Xbox, around the time that the Scorpio is supposed to launch, so that when the machine becomes available in November or whatever we probably expect, there's also a brand new Microsoft game for the Xbox One and Xbox Scorpio released. And if it's going to be a sequel to something like a new Forza or, you know, Halo or whatever, it might be that, or it might be a brand new IP, but something first party so that Microsoft can sell software and hardware with all brand new stuff and a brand new marketing push around the same time in November. Another Scorpio big bet I have has to do with something we've all seen in the news, circulating in the news the last week or so, and that has to do with the little FPS counter screen that's on the front, apparently, of the Scorpio dev kits, and some people theorize or wonder, is that going to be part of the final product? And based on how Microsoft talks about the power of the machine, it might be something they would be interested in doing. I, however, am going to make a pretty safe bet that that will not be on the final product of the Scorpio. We're not going to have a little frames per second counter, you know, little clock going on the front of the Scorpio. I do think it's a unique sort of thing to hear about the dev kit having that, given what Microsoft is trying to push and what they're trying to achieve with this thing. And just in terms of power and performance, I think it's a cool concept, and like, I don't really care about these things, but I do think it would be interesting to play a game and actually watch the console I'm playing it on tick away and continually change as the frame rate fluctuates. I think that that would be just a fascinating thing, but nothing that I actually put any major importance into as far as like the game that I'm playing or the console that I'm playing on. And through that, I think that Microsoft knows they'd make a huge PR blunder if they actually release this thing with that frame counter. And I think that more than entice tech heads, I think it would push away a lot of the casual gamers in the casual market who is like, this is just dumb. It shows a focus I don't care about. I don't really understand it. I'm not going to pay attention to that little box as opposed to the game that I'm playing on my television screen, hopefully. So I just don't see a benefit to it. I get for dev kits maybe, but you know, some people theorize maybe it's on the final product, but I absolutely do not expect to see that thing on the final version of the Scorpio. My last bet for the Scorpio is something we all knew we have to start talking about soon and eventually here, and that is going to be the final price of the Scorpio. A lot of people have theorized the exact price, I think, as well, but it is definitely what I believe in. $499. That, I think, is the absolute perfect price point for the Scorpio. Now, knowing a lot of you guys know how I'm not a huge tech head and I don't understand all the stuff that goes inside of consoles and what they do, I know a lot of people who do understand that stuff, who broke down Digital Foundry's explanation of the specs and the innards of the Scorpio, said, oh, this thing could be upwards of like $1,000. I don't have any knowledge to, you know, agree with that or to refute that. I just know what Microsoft would need to do to make this thing a competitive player in the console gaming space and in the Xbox brand space. And they can't release a console that's $700 or more. I don't see that happening. If they do, they're just making a huge mistake. But if they want this thing to have any chance at success, it's got to be lower than that. And I think they can't possibly go any higher than what they launched the base Xbox One at, with the Kinect granted, at $500. I think that $500 is like the very, very high end of the same price range that we have right now with the PlayStation and the Switch on the market and the current Xbox One. We're in that $300-$400 range. I think you can go one step up to $500 for this super crazy powerful future machine, whatever the Scorpio is going to be, and still be something that might be enticing enough to people and shows that it's powerful and it's worth that price, but it's not so expensive that it's going to push people away. So I believe we will get the price reveal as well at E3 this year, and my bet is $499. One last Microsoft-centric bet that I have is that we are probably going to hear from Halo, but it was recently confirmed that sadly, apparently, we're not going to hear from Halo 6. Very, very sad to hear, but 343 did say that they have something Halo-related planned. And what I think it's probably going to be is some form of Halo Reach remaster or re-release. It's the one old previous generation Halo game that we've yet to hear from. The Master Chief Collection, which I love, has Halos 1 through 4, including ODST, which is really pretty cool that they added that because of how they botched the launch of the game. And I think that that's all great, but Halo Reach to me is one of my favorite Halo games. I'm a huge Halo fan, by the way. So I feel like Halo Reach is probably going to be released or talked about in some form. Whether it's like this crazy, in-depth, involved remaster, akin to what the Gears of War remaster was, and they can sell this Halo Reach like in physical form for like 40 to 60 bucks with a bunch of new content and way updated visuals, that would be great. I would actually love that. But I could also see it being something as simple as a slight remaster with a couple of new tweaks released just on Xbox Live for like $19.99, something like that. Or possibly an update for the Master Chief Collection. I think it could be any form of those things. And I would be happy with any of them. I'd love an easier way to access Halo Reach, and I would pay 20 bucks for it, again, to download it on Xbox Live. But I'd probably love a $40 to $50 physical remaster that, again, is of the quality and the detail of what the Gears of War Ultimate was. I thought that was really cool too. So whatever it is, I think we're going to hear from Halo, and I think it's going to be about a Halo Reach re-release in some fashion. Let's move on to a couple of Sony big bets for the year. I think that we will hear, I think a lot of people won't agree with this one, but I think we're going to hear from God of War, and I think that we are going to get the release date of God of War. Now, with Sony, those guys are so hard to predict when it comes to their release dates and the time it takes them to make their games. I am not crazy enough to predict that date. I mean, maybe 2018 sometime before the end of the year next year, but I'm not going to actually predict the date. I just think that they will give us a date, or at least a year. They will confirm 2018 or 2019, or they might say March 31st, 2018, or whatever the date might be. I think we're going to get that date, or at the very worst, a release window for God of War, because a lot of us expect that game to be far down the road. Sony's got a couple of great exclusives that have released this year and that we're probably still going to get by the end of the year, and that's great. I'm really happy to see that stuff. I'm very excited for these games. I think that they need to continue that, and in order to continue that, they need to give us a promise of exclusive content for next year, and I think that God of War would be that perfect game to give us that release date. Now, on the other spectrum, I have another release date-oriented bet, and that has to do with The Last of Us Part 2, which is my most anticipated game, like, period right now, that we actually know about. And so excited for this game, and I think we are not at all going to get any sign of a release date. We might not even hear from the game at all this year. I'm not going to commit to that, and so it's not part of my bet. I'm more talking about the possibility of a release date or a release window for Last of Us, and whether they talk about the game or show it at all or not, I don't think that they're going to give us any sort of hint as to when this game is coming, because I believe it's pretty far off. I think 2019 would be the earliest we're going to see The Last of Us Part 2, which crushes my soul to think about it being so far off, but I want them to take whatever time they need, and, you know, there are talks in the industry that, you know, it was just revealed at, I think, PSX a couple months ago. It was a couple months ago it was finally revealed. It must have been PSX in December. And there were some talks that they probably only just barely started actual production on that game, maybe just within the last 8 months to a year, so it's pretty new in development, in which case 2019 starts to make more sense. Whatever the case may be, whenever it's going to eventually release, I don't know, but I don't think we're going to hear any sort of release date from The Last of Us Part 2. Now, furthering the Sony conversation and the exclusive conversation around Sony, I think we're also going to hear from a brand new IP from Sony, or at least for the PlayStation 4. I'm not going to necessarily say it's specifically a Sony first-party game, but I think some sort of brand new IP that is exclusive to the PlayStation 4, whether it's Sony or a third-party developer, I think we're going to get announced. Sony is actually really, really good at that stuff, and people might not really notice that or give them enough credit, but I really think they try really hard. Look at Bloodborne and look at The Order 1886. And I know The Order 1886 isn't a good game. I have not played it, but I know that the general consensus is that it's not a good game. But I'm not talking about whether or not it turned out to be good. I'm talking about that it was high profile, it was a big deal, developed by a well-renowned studio, and it was an exclusive game that people were very excited for, and Sony was hyping and hyping. And I feel like, combined with other titles they've done that with before, I think we're going to hear from something else brand new from Sony. I doubt it would be something they would be releasing this year. I would think it's going to be something also for next year. But who knows when it would actually release. I just expect to hear a brand new IP. It's going to be not a sequel or not any series we've ever heard of. A brand new IP exclusive to the PlayStation 4, I think, will be revealed or announced. Also, let's move forward with one last Sony big bet that I really believe in here, and I think it's going to be a smidge controversial. I think we will have little to no mention of VR on stage at Sony's press conference. I think VR will probably, if not definitely, be present on the show floor, and there might even be one or two new titles that maybe some indie developers or some other smaller teams have brought to E3 to show for VR, or specifically to showcase VR. I expect that, but when it comes to just on stage, specifically at Sony's press conference, I think we might get a slight mention of it, like some initial sales where the first launch week were very impressive, something like that maybe. But I think it's either that or maybe nothing. VR helmets, VR talk is going to take up almost, if no time, at Sony's press conference. And for VR fans, it's probably really sad news. I want to try VR and I want to believe in it. As I've said, I really just don't care right now. It's not interesting to me. It's just a big, expensive waste of time. I know the technology and the practical application for games I care about is not there. So I don't really care, and I don't really want them to spend any time talking about VR. And that is why. And the fact that it also, by the way, has not taken off. Oculus hasn't taken off, HTC, Sony VR, nothing has really taken off. VR is already almost old news, believe it or not, so I just don't expect Sony to spend any time. They were willing to shove the PSP and the PS Vita under the rug really quickly. I think they're going to be doing the same thing with VR this year. And let's get to a couple more wider game-specific big bets for the show that cover all the different companies and all the different possibilities. I think that this year we are going to hear of a brand new Platinum Games title. Now, what that's going to be, I don't necessarily know. Obviously, a lot of us want Bayonetta 3. I think Bayonetta 3 is certainly a good possibility, and I would freak the hell out if that happened. So, fingers crossed we get Bayonetta 3. We all know Scalebound was canceled recently, which is a shame. I doubt we're going to see that resurrected. I think if that gets resurrected, it's going to be a couple of years down the road, and it's probably going to be vastly different than what we saw for the Xbox One. Is it going to be a sequel? Is it going to be like a Vanquish 2 or another Mad World or Wonderful 102? Ooh, give me Wonderful 102. It might be that. It might not be a sequel. It might be a new IP, like how Scalebound was a new IP. Maybe it's another Transformers. Maybe they're going to do another like a Power Rangers thing, how they've been doing like old 80s and 90s TV shows and making games out of them. You know, whatever it is. I think Platinum has some new game, whether it's for multi-platform, whether it's a platform exclusive, whether it's a sequel or a new IP. We're going to get something new from Platinum. I definitely believe that, and oh my god, I'm so excited to see what it could be. This big bet is very interesting because it crushes my soul to say out loud, but it also has to do with some recent rumors and things that have been in the news, so I think it's pretty interesting. I have to say, and I want this, and I even put this on a video talking about surprises I want to have happen, but I really feel, as much as the internet has been wanting to tell us it's going to happen, I think we will not, sadly, hear from Beyond Good and Evil 2 from Ubisoft this year. I definitely have been starting to believe some of the hype that says maybe the game is actually real. Finally, we can start to believe in it. And some of the things from Michel Ancel posting on Instagram, it's like, yeah, you know, maybe that game is real. Maybe they really are making it. The sequel to one of my all-time favorite games. Bring it on. I want this game. But whether or not they're working on it, I might still believe that. I just don't think we're going to hear from it this year like some people theorize. And I could see this being wrong, and it's going to be like my favorite moment in E3 history, almost. But I'm going to still, I think if I'm going to place a bet, and I gotta be gutsy and just put it out there, I'm going to err on the side of caution and say I don't expect to hear from Beyond Good and Evil 2 from Ubisoft. I do think what we might hear from Ubisoft is from a brand new IP from them also. Just like with Sony or potentially Platinum, I think we might be getting some new IPs from a lot of companies this year. And while I don't believe in Beyond Good and Evil 2, I do potentially think we could see, because Ubisoft is actually really good with this and very consistent, to their credit, we might hear from a new IP. In fact, I certainly have some pretty darn good reason to believe that this darned Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle game might actually be real. Someone who I do know shared some information with me, really, that definitely makes it look like that game could be real. I will not tell you what I've seen or known or talked about. I will not tell you the person or people that I've talked to. I want to keep all that stuff secret. But, I'm not going to sit here and tell you, like, it's 100% real. I've seen some things, I've heard some things, I know some things that make it seem like, you know, if they were going to give us a new IP, maybe it would be this Mario plus Rabbids game. So that whole situation is going to be really interesting to see play out if that was the game, if that game is real, and if that's what Ubisoft was going to show this year. Would it be something that Nintendo would announce at their Spotlight, or would it be something that Ubisoft announces at their press conference? Who really knows? You know, we've seen Ubisoft cross genres and work with things like South Park and stuff. Maybe they'd also be working with Nintendo. So that's going to be really interesting, but there's a couple of bets there. I don't believe we're going to hear Beyond Good and Evil 2. I do think we're going to get a new IP, and I do think there is a pretty good possibility that new IP does turn out to be this Mario and Rabbids game. Okay, a couple of more gaming big bets here. We're going to wrap up with some from Square. Final Fantasy VII. I think we're going to get just a small update on Final Fantasy VII. And I guess I shouldn't maybe say small, because I think what we might see is maybe a small updated trailer that's very short with a little content, maybe a minute or a minute and a half. We might get another tiny little section of gameplay like when they first revealed it, and they had like, well, not first revealed it, but when they first showed gameplay that was like, I think like a 5 or 6 minutes, if I remember, of like some gameplay of Cloud running around doing his thing. And we might get another sort of small little snippet of gameplay like that. And they might, you know, briefly mention it and talk about it. It's still planned. It's still in development. We're still doing it in this, like, episodic parts thing. No release date or platforms or any information yet. Because that game is a goddamn decade away, guys. That game is so far away, unfortunately. And I want to be excited for it because I've never played Final Fantasy VII, and I would love to play this this remake of the game. I'm very excited. So I think that it's not going to be, I don't think we're not going to hear from it at E3. I think it's going to be just the tiniest bit of update with a possible trailer or updated gameplay. And my final big bet for E3 this year, for non-Nintendo stuff basically, sadly is going to end on a kind of negative note. I know a lot of you guys aren't going to love this, but this is just me going with my gut feeling here. And another one, I would love to be wrong, but I really think it's going to play out this way. I think we are definitely going to get basically nothing from Kingdom Hearts 3 this year. And through that, let's say they even do mention it or address it on stage, even with something as simple as a logo, I definitely don't think anyone can expect brand new gameplay from Kingdom Hearts 3. I am done putting any faith in Square to do anything in this world. And they have these amazing games and these amazing franchises that we all want and their fans just clamor for. And they just are this weird, like, in this little nebulous void of time. I swear to God, they're in, like, the reverse of the hyperbolic time chamber from Dragon Ball Z, where they're probably working like crazy, but, like, no time is passing. I guess that wouldn't be the reverse. Maybe that'd be the actual... Yeah, that would actually be the hyperbolic time chamber. They're in the freaking hyperbolic time chamber making these games. Either way, their games just take forever, man. I mean, Final Fantasy 15 was supposed to be 13 Versus that literally skipped the entire PlayStation 3 before it released last year as a totally different game. I mean, it's just absolutely ridiculous what they do. Kingdom Hearts 3 took them forever to finally address the game. Kingdom Hearts 2 was like 12 years ago or something crazy. And so I just feel like... I will say I think they owe us an update on Kingdom Hearts 3. They owe the fans an update and a gameplay and a release date, and something they should stick to, but they're not going to do that. I think Square's mostly just going to be focusing on Dragon Quest stuff this year, and that's fine, because that stuff is immediately ready to go, and everyone's excited for that for their PS4 and their Switches and their 3DSs, and I might even pick the game up on the Switch, because I'm really curious to try a Dragon Quest game on my Switch. I think that'd be really cool. So I think that's mostly what they're going to focus on. We're going to get that tiny little update of Final Fantasy VII, and we probably won't hear from Kingdom Hearts 3 at all. And if we do, we sure are not getting gameplay. It's a bummer. Square, figure your life out, but I think that that's what it's going to be, you guys. So that's it. There's a whole bunch of big bets for E3 this year. Oh, man, really exciting stuff. What's going to happen with the Scorpio? What's going to happen with the PlayStation? What's happening with Square? Are we getting Mario plus Rabbids? Beyond Good and Evil 2? Will it ever finally be revealed as real? God, I hope so badly. That's it. You know, this is a lot of fun. Like I said, I should have said this again at the beginning. This is only me just doing this just for fun as a fan. I'm only having a good time talking about bets. I can't say like, oh, I know all the different secrets, and so everything I say is going to be true. You should totally believe in me. It's really me just having a good time talking about E3 and being excited and trying to get you guys excited as well. So what do you think about my bets? What do you think about the wide variety of gaming topics I talked about on today's video? I definitely want to hear your theories. What do you agree with that I said, and what do you vehemently and angrily disagree with? Because, man, people get really angry when they don't agree with something you might say on the internet, especially in the gaming world, man. Whew, people are sensitive, let me tell you. So that's it for today, guys. E3 hype keeps rolling. I got another video planned in the next couple of days as well, so look forward to that. But talk about these big bets below. Talk about E3. Thanks as always for tuning in, guys. This is Rob of Rule 2 Review, and I will catch you all next time on another video.